Kingdoms of Avardo. Now, the Kingdoms of Avardo is a mod that I've been waiting for so long. Of course, it is Mount and Blade 2 Bannerlord set in Middle Earth, taking Lord of the Rings from the films and books and putting it into the Taleworlds developed game, and in the most spectacular way possible. Kingdoms of Avardo, of course, is a single-player and multiplayer total conversion from Mount and Blade 2 Bannerlord, bringing the worlds of Tolkien into the game. Of course, this is going to include many different characters and locations, and especially weapons and armor. Talking about the single player, you're going to be in Middle Earth during the campaign, but not only is there sandbox features like Mount and Blade 2 Bannerlord, but there's also going to be a story mode. You're going to be able to play as your favourite characters in the scenes from the books and films, but also interact with many new characters as well that haven't been in that media. Playable races such as the elves, dwarves, Dundane, orcs, hobbits, goblins, uruks, the list goes on and on. Of course, you have the race of men as well if you're that boring type of guy. But all these factions will have their own custom icons, sigils, flags, and it will feel like you're in the world that Tolkien created. Along with this, you have all the new creatures, trolls, ents, mumakils, wargs, and so many more. Along with each faction, they'll all have their own unique troop trees, going up with infantry, archers, and cavalry, much like the base game of Mount and Blade 2 Bannerlord, but now using the troops that you can expect to see throughout the films. Now, pay attention. I do mention that this is more based on the trilogy, the film trilogy. Whilst, as I mentioned, it takes the inspiration from Peter Jackson and his work, trust me, there's going to be so many more features and in-depth lore throughout this mod. From what I have heard, they're taking their main inspiration from the films, but also side tidbits and facts and extra info from the books and all the side lore around it, written by Tolkien himself. But along with the new troop trees of all the factions, there's also going to be mercenaries that you're going to be able to recruit. They'll have new weapons and armors that you won't have seen in any of the other factions. Of course, you have the Rohirrim with the heavy cavalry riding across the steppes, and you can actually see in this pretty much only video clip that we have of the mod so far, the Rohirrim maps, and boy, does it look like it's coming along well. Furthermore, we have all the screenshots of all the armors, and it looks like the focus on the Gondor feels so realistic and authentic to the way it has been portrayed in media in the past. I remember playing Full Invasion 2 back in the day in Mount and Blade Warband and always wanting to play Lord of the Rings as Gondor because I loved their armor and their square shields and their bastard swords. It felt like I was playing as a true medieval soldier, but up against dragons and trolls and all which way of enemies, and it felt amazing. And it feels like that's being recaptured throughout this mod. There's going to be so many new siege equipments as well, all the custom things. I'm expecting that they're probably not going to go too over top with that sort of thing, whilst focusing more on the quests and the storyline that's going to be playable throughout the single player. But there's also going to be some special features, some cameos from people that you might recognize. Because it is being based on the trilogy and the films, you're going to be able to notice characters that have been throughout those stories. The Fellowship being the main ones, but also side characters that you might stumble across throughout the land. But can you be part of the Fellowship? I'm sure that's what many of you are wondering. And yes, of course you can. The start of your campaign is actually going to be set a few years before the Fellowship leave Rivendell, but if you're there at the time and you're present and you have the right amount of influence and you've been experienced enough and they accept you, you will be able to interact and join the Fellowship if you want to. But what if you don't? What if Sauron and Saruman seem like your cup of tea? While playing as an evil character, you're also able to oppose the Fellowship, fight against them and stop them on their task and quest. And yes, it is possible to kill these characters. People like Aragorn, Frodo, Saruman, they'll all be killable, but there will be some caveats to them. Of course, the generic Fellowship, they'll be a lot stronger and they'll be pretty difficult to take out, but if you have the right army and you go about it the right way with the right strategies, it is possible. However, characters like the Nazgul can only be killed once you defeat Sauron. So if you're playing as the good guys, that's probably going to be your main target. There will be other quests, not necessarily the big quests that we know from the films, but also side quests, taking you on different journeys and different storylines, writing a whole new narrative in Middle-earth. You will be following something that has been set, that has been treaded along throughout the Middle-earth storylines in the past, but you will be able to go your own way. featuring more of a sandbox structure if that's your type of gameplay style, because I know many people prefer that in Mount & Blade and don't really like the quests and the storylines that in other games you're sometimes forced to do. Of course, on screen now you can see an overview of the basics of what we can expect from the overworld map. It hasn't been made since I think that's probably going to be a bit of a big project, but we have seen some of the scenes that you go into with battles. We of course saw Rohan, and we can see some other scenes throughout. Castles are being built in the map editor. Of course, it's still using the basic Bannerlord armor at the moment, but it does look like it's all coming together. It feels very Middle-earth. You can see in some of the screenshots the snowy mountains in the background, and the way they've done it so brilliantly, and how Bannerlord's map editor has given them the opportunity to do that. Of course, in the actual scene, the mountains aren't that big, but with the illusion of putting them that far back, they look gigantic from where you're standing as a player. I love the menu screen at the beginning, choosing who you want to play as. Even if you start as just Gondor, there's separate tiny regions in Gondor that will all have their own unique style and gameplay, their unique factions and logos that you're going to be able to use and manipulate in any way you want. And then comes the armor. The characters just look absolutely brilliant. I'm assuming what we can see here is Boromir and probably Faramir, although they look like the same character model at this point. They look fantastic. Of course, you can once again see King Theoden on horseback, ready with his own guard. And then, as I mentioned before, the Gondor infantry. This is where it really shines for me, and this is why I wanted to show this mod out today. The attention to detail and how good it looks. Bannerlord has given us the opportunity to have these scenes, these armors, using better graphics, more details, and being able to bring these worlds to life. Warband had all these mods, but it was limited. It was limited by the bad looking engine of Warband, but now we don't have that, and now we can go all out. Of course, there was no release date confirmed yet of Kingdoms of Avardo, but it will be one that I'll be following very closely. I might add all these mods will be linked in the description. Next, we have Sword and Musket. And yes, this is the mod that I'm sure so many people are waiting for, perhaps one of the most hyped mods for Bannerlord in general. Sword and Musket, of course, is the single and multiplayer mod for Mount & Blade 2 Bannerlord, which is set during the French Revolution, Revolutionary Wars, and, most importantly, the Napoleonic Wars. This is the predecessor to the Mount & Blade Napoleonic Wars DLC, one of the most successful DLCs for most games ever. It really put Mount & Blade Warband on the map and the series in general, and hopefully this mod can live up to what its predecessor did. Now, the mod will be multi and single player, but initially they're working on the multiplayer to be released, since I think this is what most people are waiting for. We have had single player Napoleonic Wars mods in the past, such as L'Anglais, but it really was the multiplayer DLC that put it on the map, that really formed the regiments and clans that made Mount & Blade and its community the size it is now. So, multiplayer is coming first, and initially it will be with France and the United Kingdom. But of course, later on will come other countries. From their Discord, I can see some ideas for Russian and Prussian uniforms, so they're most likely confirmed, but I'm sure we're going to get many more countries and factions as it goes on. Of course, it goes without saying that the mod will be taking massive inspiration from the Napoleonic Wars DLC that we saw in Warband. So you're going to be seeing many of the same units and regiments, and they're going to resemble each other but not be identical. But since they've both tried to be historical, there will be a lot of similarities resembling each other. Currently though, there is very little that we can see on the mod, except from a few screenshots of the uniform models, but they look like they're coming along amazingly well. I love, for one, the 33rd Officer uniform, and of course the Highlanders, who, without them, it wouldn't really be a Napoleonic Wars mod. But it's not strictly NW though. You see, the single player is going to branch out into some of the other wars and events around the same period, with the French Revolution and of course the wars that came with it. So far we know that they want to aim to show us some of the campaigns against the Ottoman Empire in Egypt, and many of these wars will be playable throughout the single player, and I would love it if these were also possible to see them come to multiplayer in terms of the scenes and the maps, and maybe even historical battle recreations that I'm sure the community will be all over. Now, I did say that hardly any info on the mod has come out so far, but make sure you stick around this channel, as in the next few days I have some very exciting news and possibly some visuals to show you from this mod coming from the devs themselves. So make sure if you haven't, subscribe to the channel, as it helps out more then you know. Currently, most of you watching this video aren't actually subscribed yet, so please, if you have a second, click that button and perhaps the bell icon. You can always change your mind later on if you don't like it. The Separatist Crisis. This is a single-player experience paired with co-op play and multiplayer set in the Star Wars universe. Now, you may be wondering, what does co-op play mean? Well, we don't have any confirmation of this so far, but I'm assuming it's something similar to what we've seen with some commander-like battles, or even some full invasion type things, with players defending against waves and hordes of enemies, or even doing some smaller side missions with other people. I'm not entirely sure that it's going to mean a co-op single player, but I guess only time will tell. But the mod revolves around Star Wars. It aims to take the place of Star Wars mods from Warband like Bear Force 2 and so on, and be the standard setting Star Wars mod for Bannerlord. It features 6 unique storylines, 100 diverse planets, and massive amounts of equipment that will keep you intrigued through your entire playthrough of the mod. And this shows through the developer blogs, whilst they're taking a lot of inspiration from Warband mods and a lot of the material that we've seen in media from the past. They're trying to create something unique and original. There may be characters that you meet along the way from past Star Wars storylines, but they kind of want to separate themselves from it. So let's go into these storylines. As we mentioned, there are 6 original storylines that you're going to be able to play through in the campaign, and these include the Jedi. You are a Padawan and you have to work your way up throughout the Order, learning the ways of the Force with new skills, and finally becoming a master and being able to go through the land as a Jedi. It's going to be a pretty tough campaign to play with, but you will soon become extremely powerful. On the other side of this, we have the Sith, a similar experience starting at nothing. You don't have anything to your name and you have no sort of power, but through anger and determination, you can grow to be a Sith Lord that can take on the likes of even the strongest Jedi. And these campaigns can actually weave in and out each other with the Jedi and the Sith that may sometimes even meet. Next we have the Mandalorian. You are a bounty hunter, but a foundling that was on Mandalore. It is your task to train the ways of the Creed and learn your people, then go and take back the place that is rightfully yours. I think this will be what many people play, especially after the success of the incredible Disney Plus show, which Season 2, oh my god, it is incredible. Next is the campaign of the Clone Trooper. You are part of the army, nothing special, but you have your own personality. You have experienced wars and it's hurt, but how far will you get? Will you be able to distinguish yourselves to becoming an officer in the clone army, or will you just fall among the hundreds of thousands of other clone troopers like the rest of them? On the spin of the Clone Trooper is a Separatist droid, a very similar experience to the campaign that we'll probably experience with the Clone Trooper, but I'm assuming a bit less personal. I'm a bit unsure about the Separatist droid campaign, if I'm going to be honest, because that doesn't seem like it can get that in depth, because, I mean, you're a droid, but it could be interesting to see how the storyline plays out and how they actually interweave it with other storylines and other characters throughout the world. And finally, the Hutt Cartel. It pretty much speaks for itself. You are part of the dangerous bounty hunters and scavengers in the galaxy, and you're not exactly trustworthy. How far can this sort of gameplay style get you? Do you pit other factions against each other with sly maneuvers and tactics, or will everyone discover your snake-like ways and put you down to the dust the way you were born? I, for one, can't wait to try out the Clone Trooper campaign, perhaps the Mandalorian one as well. I feel like it can get really in-depth, and you can really get into knowing how these characters work in some separate storylines. This isn't just you playing a sandbox as these characters. They're writing unique storylines that will drag you into this world and create your own stories throughout it. Some things that we haven't really seen before, and it seems like the mod developers for Bannerlord are really trying to create narratives and stories rather than just overhauling and reskinning a sandbox. Of course, there will be the multiplayer as well, with some amazing clan battles, and we can see that with the maps and scenes on the screenshots. Hoth looks amazing, and the highlight that stands out for me the most is the Clone Trooper armor. I can't wait to see this mod, and I think the work that we have seen so far looks amazing. I'll definitely be keeping my eye out for these storylines in the single player, and especially the clan battles in the multiplayer. But Separatist Crisis for me looks to be a very strong contender. And that's it. That is 3 up-and-coming mods that look absolutely incredible, and all of these are so deep into development. I don't think it's going to be too long before we at least see something from one of them, as I hinted earlier. Now, make sure you stick around, because there's some very exciting stuff in the modding community for Bannerlord coming very soon, especially in the next few days, and whilst there's some stuff with Mountain Musket, I may be talking about some sort of mod that brings co-op to Mountain Blade 2 Bannerlord.